Thank you for being so attentive. Either you've been very attentive or else you are asleep. Y'all can laugh. But I am glad, truly glad to be here today representing my father. And I will be sharing with you my father's words. If my father were here, he would tell you that the title of his speech is How Martin Luther King Changed His Life. A note to this matter is that if you didn't know, Martin Luther King was born initially in his first days as Michael, and then later changed his name to Martin. If my father was here, he would tell you that as a young man growing up in Winchester, Kentucky, you can appreciate this. They had school in a very crowded room. He was in kindergarten, and the school was so crowded that they had to go across the street to the gymnasium just to have class for the kindergartners because of the baby boom. He can remember going to theaters that were all white and the blacks had to sit up in the balcony. He remembers that those times when they had to go watch the movies. I know we have IMAX theaters and we're able to sit back in comfortable seats and look at 3D videos and movies, but they had to sit up in a crowded, cramped balcony where blacks were told to go. They didn't have the opportunity to sit in the front of these luxurious places. And when they were up there, they would, as kids and being mischievous, they used to throw popcorn down on those below them, just as a means of kind of being anti-movie. So he understands and knows that even as a young man, that he had to endure being separated in a place where everybody should have an opportunity. He remembers also how he lived in Winchester, Kentucky, and he would have to go to Shelbyville, Kentucky to visit his grandparents and his other relatives. And in the bus stations, they would have to sit in a certain place, and on the buses in which they rode from Winchester to Shelbyville, they had to sit in the back of the bus. But we are certainly grateful for that one day in Alabama where a young lady who said who was tired, whose feet would have been hurting, a young lady who said, I'm not getting up anymore to go to the back of the bus. A young lady who stood up fearlessly and said that enough is enough. And from that, it started the bus boycott. 382 days in Montgomery, Alabama, this young lady started a revolution of civil rights, all because she wanted to sit down to rest her feet, and all because she refused to go back to the back of the bus. He can also remember how in these places that you had color-only signs. What does color mean? Color is another word for Negro or for black, and today we're politically correct, we say Afro-American. But in those days, you literally had signs in a place like today where you have what we term a water fountain. You had a water fountain for the blacks and a water fountain for the whites. Can you imagine going into a place and you had your own water fountain, and there was a distinction between water fountains. One was clean and sanitary, the other was dirty and messed up. He attended an all-black school. Like I said before, his first class was crowded. He moved to Louisville in 1955, where he attended Carter Elementary School. He also attended Duval Elementary School. And even here in Louisville, the theaters were separated. You had black theaters called the Grand, the Lyric, and the Royale. He went down 4th Street. Now we see 4th Street, we call it 4th Street Line. But back in those days, it was called 4th Street Segregated. Even on 4th Street, downtown in Louisville, Kentucky, blacks could not go to those theaters, nor could they eat at lunch counters. And he's not talking about what he heard. He is talking about what he experienced. In the West End, if you know your geography, you have a park called Chickasaw and a park called Shawnee. Let me just help you to imagine. Chickasaw is a lot smaller than Shawnee. And why is that? And why do you have two parks so closely together in proximity? Well, it's because that Shawnee was for all the whites that lived in the West End, and Chickasaw was for all the blacks that lived in the West End. And the West End has not always been as Afro-American as it is today in certain parts. The West End used to be all white at one time, but you could not go down to Shawnee Park. And if you went down to Shawnee Park, he would experience and had experienced fights, and also other things. So we take for granted. Now we live in a city that is known for the illustrious, we're known for their parks. Our former mayor, Mayor Abelson, put up millions of dollars of private money to enhance our parks. Isn't it wonderful to know that we have come a long way? Well, parks used to be segregated, but now everybody can enjoy the pleasure of our parks here in Louisville, Kentucky. He ended up moving a place called off of Olive Street. Olive Street is off the Hill Street in 1962, and right down, about 2 blocks down from their home, was another park called Algonquin. As they were walking down the street to Algonquin, they would see painted in the street, "Go home," the N-word. And you know what I'm talking about. That word is so crazy and so disruptive, I will not and cannot say it. And unfortunately, even in our day today, we use that term as a term of endurance. You know, blacks call other blacks that, whites call other whites that. It used to be a time when if a white person called a black person the N-word, we would get offended and start fighting. But how messed up it is when a black person calls a black person the N-word and we think it's cool. Understand this, the history of that word will never be justified to use it as a term of enduring. And as a young man, I refuse to use that word. And I hope you today will not use that word. That word has the word of hatred attached to it. That word was used to degrade and belittle people. That word, no matter if it's in the dictionary or not, is not a word that anybody should be referred to, whether friend or foe. My father went to, as you heard, he went to Manual High School. He had his first interaction with integration while there as well in 1964. This also marked the time of social movement and changes regarding segregation. In 1954, Martin Luther King blessed us with his presence coming here, and he spoke at a church of the 22nd and older. And the reason that Martin Luther King was here in Louisville, Kentucky, he was talking about the housing situation in Louisville, Kentucky. Martin Luther King at that time was the pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. He was also on the executive committee of the NAACP. Does anybody know what the NAACP stands for? Not the NC2A, but the NAACP. National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Amen. Great, great, great. So Martin Luther King was there in 1957. He was the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I would encourage you to read the letter, if you have not, read the letter that Martin Luther King wrote from the jailhouse in Montgomery, Alabama. Martin Luther King had a way with putting words together that would paint the picture of the time and situation and scenario. I know we're celebrating Martin Luther King, but understand this, my brothers and my sisters who are here as well. Martin Luther King was never about himself. Martin Luther King was born into a world that was separated by segregation and hate. Martin Luther King lived a life to make it better for everybody. Martin Luther King didn't die rich. He just died a hero. And for that, we are certainly grateful for what he has done.